Hey, this is Steve in Dallas, Texas. It's Saturday morning, my friend, and you are listening to Light Talk.
Good morning. This is Zach coming to you from the Las Vegas Strip. And today we will discuss day rates, kit rentals, getting paid on time, and depleting our retirement funds, all on Light Talk.
And this is Stan, and believe it or not, I'm coming to you from the beautiful Belmont Shore neighborhood of Long Beach, California.
Wait, are you at my house?
I am. I'm downstairs. Can you not see me?
Live from the kitchen.
Live from the kitchen.
And this is David, also coming to you from the beautiful Belmont Shore neighborhood of Long Beach, California. And if you don't already know, you are listening to Light Talk, and we are the 4 Lumen Brothers. You thought there were only 3, but
There's like 9 of them now.
How the hell did this happen, Stan? I mean, you're here now.
Yeah.
Well, how did you end up at my house?
Yeah,
What's going on?
It wasn't in the plan. But like I've been telling people, we've been isolated for 2 years, and we're out traveling for the first time, and we are extremely rusty. So how did we do this? Well, first I fell down while trying to shoot a basketball.
You fell down?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, you should see the concrete, man. It looks bad.
This explains a lot now.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So the concrete looks like shit, and I'm recovering. I hope. And then, when we made hotel reservations, we forgot how it works. So, like, when you say you want to be there from November 5th to November 16th, that doesn't mean you get the night of the 16th.
No, you check out on the 16th.
Yes. Well, of course. But if you forget how to do it, which both of us did, and they told us yesterday, hey, you're out tomorrow morning. And I said, okay, well, let me extend for a day. There was no extending because travel is weird, man. Everything's sold out.
Booked.
I was when I was in DC. I was in DC, and I wanted to leave early and get a car 2 days sooner. No cars. There were no cars to be had in Washington D.C. So it's been weird. So then we were going to drive to Las Vegas this morning and stay with Brackley, which was the plan. But his house is in disarray because they're fixing the backyard, they're fixing the pool. So we were going to, anyway. We ended up realizing that David has a bed, and so we bought him lunch, and he gave us a bed. So we're going to stay here tonight, and then tomorrow we'll drive to Vegas and see you, Zach, and everybody else. And Steve, I'm sure, is coming or is already there. Are you already there, Steve?
Yeah, Zach and I are down at the Thunder Down Under exhibit.
Yes.
And,
Did you have to wear something like a special?
You have to wear nothing.
No,
just a bow tie.
That's really Thunder Down Under. That's lightning, baby. That's lightning. That's not only thunder. Anyway, and it's amazing because I'm after we record the show, I have to head up to my canyon abode, my hacienda in the canyon.
He is so spoiled. Yeah.
And so he's got the master bedroom all to himself. Him and Pam could rock and roll in my master bedroom tonight.
Yeah, so I had an encounter with the basketball. I had a sporting accident, and I haven't shot a basketball, I don't know, decades, and so we were just out at the park, and I was doing pretty well. I was landing, I was getting swish shots. I was really impressed. I was impressed with myself. And then, you know how sometimes the ball bounces off the rim, it comes back on an angle, and it's going to roll like 30 feet if you don't grab it. So I went to grab it, and I thought I was fine. Like I sort of stopped myself from falling, and I was good. And then all of a sudden, I fell. I went, and my hand and my head, my knee, my rib. I mean, I've got it everywhere. So I feel pretty beat up. It's basically saying, I think the message is, Stan, you're out of shape. You're going to get...
No, I think you need to modify how you tell that story.
All right.
So I think it's now... You were playing a little one-on-one with LeBron.
That's right.
And
LeBron.
he got pissed off because you were swishing so much.
That's right. Steve's got it. That's right.
He hit you in the back with a ball and knocked you over.
Yeah.
And then you got up and kicked his ass.
That is a much better version.
Yes.
I take the Steve Woods version of that story. Yes, that was good.
Yeah, and it is realistic because LeBron does live here. So, it could have been down there visiting.
Was he in San Diego, down right behind me?
He may have been down there.
Yeah, I thought somebody just swing by me and give me a little push. and foul.
okay.
Yeah, I was shooting foul shots. So
it sounds more like Dennis Rodman to me.
He lives in Long Beach. He could have been.
There you go.
He could have been.
This happened in San Diego, though. So.
Yeah.
Well, here I am, California dreaming. It's good to be in David's house.
Okay.
This is a Lumen Brother first. That two Jews in a box, at the same time.
So
yes,
I have a
Jews
question for Stan.
Time.
How is David's in-home sound system?
Well, the last time I was here, I gave him a hard time about his lighting, and I said, "You're a freaking light designer, and your lighting is shit." So now the lighting looks better. I have to see how it is tonight. But I don't know, David, you'll have to turn on the clips for me because I haven't heard them.
You will hear it. All you have to do is turn on the television and go to like some great movie and you'll hear the sound system.
Him and I are
awesome.
going to get drunk tonight in David's house and listen to the sound.
Watch an episode of Breaking Bad. The sound in that is just amazing.
I got to do something to get away from the idea that I can't grab a basketball because LeBron James knocks me over.
Yeah.
Try football. That's easier to hold on to.
Try football.
Well,
all right. So let's
just
move on.
Say I'm a good sport, okay?
Definitely.
Yes, you are. Zach is in Las Vegas right now. The funny thing is that this show is going to be published. I should publish this early. Maybe we should publish this early because normally it would be published on Saturday, which is the day that we're actually doing the show at LDI. So maybe, if I get on, if I'm able to edit this thing, although so far it seems like I'm going to have a big job editing, I'll get it out like maybe Wednesday or Thursday night so that we can have a Saturday show. Okay, but all that being said, Zach is in Las Vegas at LDI, and we can get a real early peek because right now, what is it? Wednesday, right? It's Wednesday.
That's correct.
And so what's going on? Are there thousands of people there, Zach? What's going on at LDI?
Are they masked? Are they wearing masks?
Are they wearing masks? I saw someone wearing a mask. It might have been myself in the mirror.
Okay. No. But are there thousands of people there so far?
Right now
on
is the great rush to get everything set up before all the sessions and seminars begin. Ironically, I think we've jokingly talked about before that in the past, LDI has shared the convention center with the Cannabis Convention, but actually
are they there?
See what I'm talking about?
Actually,
there we go.
I'm in the Virgin Hotel, formerly the Hard Rock, and the Cannabis Convention is here this year.
Oh, how long is it there for?
I do not know, but there was quite a line at the Dunkin' Donuts this morning. Right? It's interesting because it seems like right now Las Vegas, at least the parts of it that I have been to, is full of convention and trade show attendees, much more than your typical gamers and vacationers. But it's exciting, it's funny when you look on Facebook, everyone we know, it's just traveling to Las Vegas. So I think this is, even though they did have in-person last year, I think this is the real return to in-person. So it's not going to be just the real hardcore people, but it's going to be a real reunion feeling, I think, for everybody to be in the same space at the same time this year.
Wow. That's going to be cool.
Yeah, it's going to be
I'm really
great.
looking forward to getting there. I'm going to be there on Saturday. Stan is going to be there tomorrow.
And I could say, I've been coming to Las Vegas for LDI since the mid-2000s. And apparently George Wallace has still been voted the best 10 p.m. show every year since then. I just love that billboard because it doesn't even say who voted him that. It just says voted best 10 p.m. show.
Okay. That makes sense. Okay. So finally, before we get started with the show, then we're going to have to end pretty soon. But I just want to tell you, I have a show opening tonight.
Oh, cool.
At USC. It's called Flight, and it's a great opera. I think it was written in the late 90s. And it's about, that dude who he was an immigrant, and he got stuck at Charles de Gaulle Airport.
Oh, yeah. He just died.
Yes, he ended up living. He was there for 18 years, right?
Yeah.
And he passed away like 2 days ago. Just amazingly, we're doing the show, which is based on his story. And a good friend of mine, Sean Coelty, did the projections, the video projections. Just awesome, absolutely awesome work. But the reason why I'm talking about this now is because we always talk on the show that for our young students who want to learn more about the profession, it's to contact designers who are coming into town and say, hey, can I shadow you? Well, this undergrad student at USC, Jace Smolansky, did that. And I said, of course, come, we're going to be focusing this day, come as long as you want. He came by. Really smart guy. And it's funny, he's from Boca Raton, and I grew up in South Florida, so we had a lot in common, but really, really curious, just terrific. He's a sophomore, right? And, we're programming away and, with professional programmers. And it's got a moderate rig. I think I got 13 movers on the show and everything else is LED. And we had a problem because one of the programs who was going to do it on Monday and Tuesday couldn't make it. And I said, Jace, do you know a programmer? He goes, yeah, me. And I said, great. So he got a job. So not only, because by the way, he's a huge fan of the show, right? So, we were, having lunch and dinner and talking about the show and, how crazy Stan is. You want to know if Stan was senile yet? And I said, well, just wait the next week and you hear the show.
Very, very close. I can
No,
see it from here.
He didn't say that. But it turned out he ended up working for us as a programmer, and he's a great programmer. So again, this basically underscores the point we're always making to people, saying, check out who's coming into town, see if you can shadow them. You never know what opportunities you're going to have. So, and I'm going to hire Jace again. I'm just going to hire him because he's great. He's terrific and a nice person. So I just want to do a shout out to him because that was really important. All right, enough of that. Let's get on to the show. And Steve has our first question.
Yes, it comes from Joseph in Oregon. And Joseph writes, how do you handle day rates? I was asked to set aside 3 days for a project. The client agreed to my day rate. On the third day, we worked just over 4 hours rather than the scheduled 7. I was asked to prorate my fee. Was this reasonable on my client's part? I'm just going to jump right in there and say, no, it's not reasonable. You are a freelance designer, freelance technician, you are a day player. So you decided that you were going to accept a 3-day gig, and your client offered you a 3-day gig. I don't think it's fair for you to work 2 days, and on the third day, the client says, well, I don't really need you all day. Let's just call it $100 and it's done. And the reason it's not fair is that you're booking work. So you could have, maybe there was an opportunity for you to work on Wednesday and Thursday and Friday someplace else, and you turned that down because you already had a gig of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So no, I think it's tricky. I think when the client agrees to something, they need to stick with it. Now, you can choose to be generous if you want to, and maybe you were generous because this is a client that you want to keep working with. That's a whole different story. That's a completely different story. If you have the power to say, look, I was only here for 4 hours, let's call it half a day and walk away friends, then you're a better man than I. But when the client books you and says, I need you from 8 to 5, and you're there, then they're obligated to pay you. That's kind of how I feel about it. What about the rest of you guys? Zach, you do you're a freelance designer. You don't have a plush university job.
You're not lazy bums like the three of us.
You're right. You teach one class a week and play video games the rest
That's
of
right.
it.
That's
What do you think?
Well, I have a funny story for you. So once upon a time, in the world of Rock of Ages on Broadway, for which I was the designer and the programmer, we wanted to add a little video thing during intermission that was like, text this to this phone number to enter to win a chance, or to get a chance to win a Sony PlayStation and Guitar Hero video game. So the producers set this all up. We had a work call. I went in and programmed it, and ran it a couple of times. Ran it with the lighting people so that we could make sure that all the cues would work. And then I sent in my invoice for half a day of programming. And then about a week later, one of the producers, who after this happened was removed as one of the producers, went on Fox News to complain about how unions are ruining Broadway. And as his example, he cited this guy came in, did about 20 minutes worth of work, and charged us for 4 hours. And it's exactly what you...
Talking about you.
Yeah, I mean, he was talking about me. And it's exactly what you were saying, Steve, is that we didn't know how long it was going to take, so we booked a session, which was a 4-hour-long session. And that being said, I absolutely agree that if it's somebody whom, you're trying to help out, you'd think that they might be strapped for cash, or if you've prearranged that you're going to do something shorter than the predetermined amount of time, then it's totally fine, I think, to negotiate that. But when I was talking about doing a Broadway show and they had a full work call and everybody else had plenty of stuff to do, I felt very comfortable sending in that invoice. And this producer who went on TV and complained about me sending in this invoice, as I said, was then removed from the producerial team and was not allowed back in the theater. So
the only thing in my mind right now, I have like a paparazzi who's taken a photograph of you kind of looking sideways out the door with a cup of coffee in your hand.
Oh, absolutely.
And a cup of coffee and a shot of scotch, right?
Yeah. I mean, the reality is if you've said, I need up to this amount of time, you can charge for that. I mean, the other part of this is like the old Picasso joke, where a woman runs up to him and says, can you draw a picture on this napkin? And he draws a picture in 2 minutes. And then he says, that'll be $10,000. And she said, it took you 2 minutes. And he said, no, it took a lifetime.
Took the words right out of my mouth. That took the words right out. I was going to say exactly the same thing, that you're not, it's like, it's not just labor. You're not an assembly line worker. And so I think Steve is right. You made an agreement. You should keep to it. You may have turned down all the work. Like when we travel as consultants, and I'm sure you do this too, Zach and Steve, and David, you get paid for travel time because that's time you can't, we're working on something else. It's not productive time. And so I think it's just sort of cheesy of that person to want to do that. It just speaks more about them than it does about you and the way that they want to conduct their business. Is it worth it? What you're saving to the relationship that you might have. I just think there's so many, like, why would you do that kinds of questions come up for me. And that the point about, it doesn't, you didn't just do it in 20 minutes. It took you years, decades. They're also paying for your judgment and your creativity. And so when you do that, it's just sort of like, it's not like, even if I say it cheapens the whole thing. Like, even if you, like, an auto mechanic might say, you're paying $200 an hour to the auto mechanic, let's say, but really the mechanics may be getting $50 an hour. The guy's got overhead. The mechanic's got years of training. I mean, there's sort of like, that's not what you are. I just think it's sort of like bad for that person's reputation, I would say. And I would also maybe say to you, when you do those negotiations, don't do verbals. And if somebody's not willing to sign something or agree to something, oh, don't you trust me? Sure, trust but verify. So it's like you want to behave, or at least in an email. So at least you have something that is, I'm willing to commit, and you're willing to commit. There's something to the sacredness of a contract between two people in a business agreement. And back in the old days, we're talking about Jewish stuff early. Most of the Mishnah, most of the ancient Jewish laws are about how to conduct yourself in business, because that's so much a part of life that shows your character and your integrity. And I think that person should just do a little reading.
Okay, Joyce from New Orleans asks, as a freelance designer, I seem to have problems getting my clients to pay me on time. Any suggestions on how I might run the business side of my career better? Boy, you talk about a good segue.
Yeah, that's a perfect segue, actually.
I think this show should be titled "All About Money."
Well, all about integrity. I'd say all about integrity, because how you handle money. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Okay, how do I get my clients to pay me on time? It is a business. That's why, you heard that's why they call it show business. It is business. It is a business. It is, absolutely. And that's why it's so difficult, because we're such nice people. We're artists and theater people. We love everyone. There's a lot of kumbaya and all that. But then you have these unscrupulous producers and artistic directors, some of them. Not all of them, obviously, but we have all met our share. And for some reason, they're holding off on paying you because they think that you're not going to care. You're not going to cause a ruckus. And after all, you're only making $2,000 for the show. So, how much could that hurt? And what power? You're not going to be able to get an attorney. You're not going to be able to afford this stuff. So why not just delay payment, or worse, not pay you at all? Okay, this is what you do. First of all, never do a show without a contract. Ever, ever, ever. At least a simple letter of agreement saying how much you're making for the show, what your fee is, and when you expect to be paid, what date. Usually, in most union contracts, you get paid in thirds. You get one on signing the agreement, 1/3. So like if it's like $3,000 fee, you'll get $1,000 as soon as that contract is signed. And that's important, because if they don't pay you anymore, or they don't pay you at all, then you just stop working on the show. Okay, but let's say they pay you $1,000, and then the next payment happens when you send all your plans in, whether light plot, hookups, all your paperwork. Then you should get your second $1,000. Now, if they don't pay you, then you don't show up for the show. You don't worry about that. You can walk away and still have $1,000 in your pocket. But if they do pay you, and then you go there, you focus the show, you cue the show, and on opening night, that's usually when that third payment is due. And if they don't pay you, then you take them to what we call small claims court. Anyone can sue in small claims court, and especially you can't do it if you don't have a written contract. You must have a written contract. And that is why always get that written contract. And if you're working with a friend, they say, oh, we don't need a contract. You and I are friends. Aren't we friends, Zach? And Zach says, yeah, we are friends, but this is a business transaction. And this is the way I do business. And if they don't want to sign it, don't do the show.
The only thing I do differently than David is that I collect my third installment at the first preview. Usually that third installment is done at the first public performance, but I do the first preview.
Mm-hmm. Good idea.
Yeah, there's an additional layer of complexity to this when you're talking about it like a Broadway show, where you might also be getting residuals. You get a weekly, what do they call it? Additional weekly compensation, and oftentimes
AWC.
Yeah, and oftentimes your AWC is staggered based on the box office for that week. And there have been many times where I've had to fight with producers to get them to pay that in a timely fashion. A lot of times, especially if a show is starting to not sell as well, they might ask if they can withhold the AWC, and our union has some very specific rules about how long they can request that, for how many weeks they can request that. And at a certain point, you're just, you never want to be that guy, but sometimes you want to say, if you can't pay this, you shouldn't be running this show if you can't pay us. But yeah, it's definitely a problem. One of the things that I have heard outside of the specific theater contract, I know you guys had Bob Boniel on the show once before, and he had told me that they put something in some of their contracts where if it's not paid within 30 days, then there's a fee that's incurred, a percentage fee, so that, it just keeps going up higher and higher if it hasn't been paid on time, as a way to motivate an employer or a producer to pay you on time.
I was gonna say that in my world it's a little different now because I'm doing the consulting, and with the 1/3 that's been traditional in theater and entertainment, we do like 5 or 6 phases in architecture. And what's interesting, and what we do, exactly what you mentioned that Bob does, is on our invoices. Well, first of all, you should have an invoice. So what should you do? You should send invoices. So you should build one, get your logo on it, make a nice invoice, and at the bottom of every invoice that we sent, it says payment is expected within 30 days of receipt. Now, we have not had the need to go as far as Bob has and say, usually it's 1.5% for every month that you're late. You start tacking it on. But if that's in your agreement, that late payments will be assessed a fee. Then if you have to go to small claims court, you'll have that was not a secret, that was out there. Sometimes what's weird, I don't know if this happens in theater these days or entertainment, but sometimes like when we're working on a big project, there are so many different specialists, and different specialists are at different, let's say, finish points in the same phase of work. So we might be done with that phase, and we'd want to bill for 100% of that segment of the work, that third, if you will, or whatever it was. And other people are like, they're not anywhere near finished. So sometimes, because we're sort of small potatoes, the architect will say, well, go ahead and bill us for 95% of this phase and we'll pay you. We haven't been paid from the owner yet. So they don't have the money, but they have enough capital that they can give me my 95% and then tack the remaining 5% balance on your next phased invoice. But I think to answer his question is, set up a real process by which you would like to work, right? And you would like to bill, and make that clear to your client, and then be consistent about it. And I think, if somebody's really a professional on the other end, they will appreciate that, as opposed to, there's a fear that we have that it will push people away if you're too prescriptive. But I would say if you push them away because they don't want to work and make clear agreements, then maybe that's somebody you don't want to work for.
And I would add, just to touch upon what Stan is talking about, that it might be really good for you for people to educate themselves about the different terminology between theater and architectural or corporate clientele. So, like that first payment that's due upon signing in theater, in architectural world, we sometimes call it a mobilization fee. Things like that, and learning about what phases are, in terms of architectural things. Because really, a lot of these things are the same. They just have a different name.
Yep.
And if you say the architectural thing to a theater person, they're not going to understand it. And the theatrical terminology to an architectural person, they're not going to understand it. So it's good to learn the different terminology between those disciplines.
It's a great point, Zach. In fact, I teach both. And in fact, I think that theater would, I'll make this statement and then people can throw apples and tomatoes at me, but I really think that theater should adopt the architectural phasing process.
Ooh.
Because it's understood globally.
Yeah.
Like if you work in Asia, where you're working, that's sort of a standard, and it really does work for us. It really is the same thing, but they'll call it programming, and we might call it script analysis, or they'll call concept meeting. I mean, it really is the same stuff, but in some ways, I teach my students that, and what they kind of at first can't do is they don't know how to slow down. They're like want to hurry up, and the architecture process is slower.
Yeah. So
you get a chance to reflect on your choices and analyze how they interact with other disciplines. There's something really kind of creatively good about that. But I would just submit that we should really consider that in our industry of adopting their phasing processes, both for billing and for creative process.
Interesting.
Julius in Portland, Oregon says, I've been working for 5 years in the profession, and my folks just asked me if I have a retirement plan in my future. How did you guys or freelance designers plan for retirement? Well, what's that great quote? That people don't plan to fail, they fail to plan, right? So I don't know. I mean, nobody taught me anything about stocks or investments or bonds or anything when I was a kid. I wish someone had, or I'd be a lot richer. I think, first of all, you should start with listening to that wonderful podcast, Artistic Finance, that Ethan Steinman was. I would start with that. He's got a lot of really great people from our industry.
Skip my episode, though. Do not listen to my episode.
Listen to David's for it's great for comedy.
It's comedy. Yes. For entertainment, it's great. Don't follow my advice.
Yeah, but David, your retirement's working out pretty well. We could. This is a very, very deep subject. But 5 years. So I'm assuming that Julius is young. 5 years in the profession, let's say you're in your 20s and 30s. I like to tell young people this. If you take a penny and you double it every day for a month, at the end of 30 days, you're a millionaire. So So you need to understand that it's not about how much you have to start planning for retirement and putting something back. It's about time. So when you're young, the thing and time really literally translates to money. So, and you can't just save it under your pillowcase. You've got to put it into things that will grow to stay at least even with inflation, if not ahead of it. So you do need to learn about stocks and bonds and all those kinds of instruments. But the simplest way is open an IRA or a Roth IRA. Even if you put $10 a month, it doesn't matter. Just start getting in the habit of putting back something every month for retirement. In an IRA is probably the best place to start if you're just getting going. And that can always be transferred. When you get enough, you could maybe start to get a financial advisor at some point, but in the early phases, not necessary. And start to educate yourself. I mean, I got a small inheritance when I was in my 30s, and I bought a subscription to Money Magazine, and I just started reading. So start reading, start educating yourself. And I think all of us could go into different details on it, but I think get started with that right now and then start to read.
The only thing I can add is if you're lucky, you can marry someone who's much more financially responsible than you are, like I did.
Marry
into it. There you go. That may be the best advice of them all.
I'm going to say our union, has a pension plan. One of the things I remember back in the 2000s when I was organizing the projection designers is I said, hey, there's a way we can turn this job into a career, because part of what I think defines a career is having health insurance, having access to retirement plan, et cetera, and the whole idea of the pension and welfare that's paid to the union when you have a theatrical contract is that you're paying, not only are you contributing into that pension plan, but that it's paying for the union's financial professionals to keep that pension alive, where many industries' pensions are dying currently. But our union has been very lucky and smart to keep juggling it and moving it around to keep it growing. And then there are so many places where you can go and get some free financial advice. If you're a freelance designer at some point, hopefully you have some success. Your taxes are going to become more complicated than you can do by yourself. And you're going to bring in somebody who can help you, and hopefully they'll have some advice too about how to be more efficient and how to take some of that money you're making and put it aside. But really, I think acknowledging that you do want to have an opportunity to retire and have a plan for that is the first step. And so that's good.
They have no choice. You're going to retire. It's going to happen. It's like there's no choice. You are going to retire at some point, unless you die first. So you might as well get ready.
Yeah, the alternative is worse, as they say.
You are listening to Light Talk, and today Light Talk is sponsored by...
Just in time for the holidays, it's the Total Bastard Projector Set, Wendell Harrington Edition. With our optional prism lenses, you can surround your guests and fill the house with projected holiday images suitable for Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's. You can decorate the kitchen, the living room, the dining room, or even the exterior of your home with the most beloved of holiday greetings. Holiday greetings you have come to expect. Greetings that are a traditional part of the seasons of love and joy. And best of all, it comes with 3 beloved pre-programmed holiday greetings we have all shared at one time or another. And who among us doesn't remember that Thanksgiving when your dad greeted you at the front door and said, "When are you going to get a real job?" Or move on to that family Christmas party with a traditional greeting of, "Have you gained some weight?" And when the lights dim on New Year's Eve, even Mom will light up the rec room with, "When are you going to get married?" Our holiday projector is waterproof, so Mom can use it outdoors. Now as you drive away, the last thing you will see in the rearview mirror will be, "I want grandkids." We will even throw that one in for free. It's our gift if you order today. How do you know you're getting genuine Total Bastard products? Just look for that caveman holding the roll of gel. total bastard. Our name says it all.
And now, back to Light Talk.
Well, the sounds of those rabid monkeys prancing about the studio in little elf costumes once again tells us that it's time for Let's Talk About. And today's Let's Talk About is all about passion versus a paycheck. How to keep the spirit that we all had when we started. Well, this came to to my attention this morning, actually. Part of it had to do with working with Jace all week and his enthusiasm and curiosity and excitement. And also, I had two students this morning, one the projection designer, the other the set designer for the school production of Rocky Horror Picture Show. And they were so excited talking about this show. The show closed like 2 nights ago, and I had them come in and explain to the students, their colleagues, what their approaches were and everything. And I have never seen so much energy in my life. And I thought back, when I was 19 years old, I had this. I had this incredible excitement. But then over the years, it seems like that excitement gets a little less powerful. That enthusiasm, that spark, that joy. And because a lot of this becomes a business, I guess there's a big theme to our show today. And it's about business, but it's also about art and keeping the passion. So what do you guys think? I mean, how do we keep that passion?
I've been thinking about it since you brought it up today, David. It's like, and I'm still thinking about it in a reflective way. There's something about newness, right, versus oldness. Like if David, if you were working on a brand new opera, for example, or Zach, you had a brand new Broadway show, a new show that was never done before, I think you might feel more of that spirit, that passion, that enthusiasm for newness. But I think when you've seen the same movie 6 times from Sunday, it starts to become old. So I think in some ways, artists to renew themselves, push themselves beyond what they've done before or do something different. I'm meeting Heather Carson this week, and I always respected her because she went from lighting opera and theater to being like a fine artist, right? And doing that, and she found another passion. It's still about light. So I think there's somehow a spirit of renewal that can occur. But I think for young people, it's new, and when it's new, it's novel, and when it's novel, there's a dopamine rush, and when it's not so new to you, it's routine. That dopamine rush is not as enhanced.
But here's the deal. I've been playing music since I was 12 years old.
You still love it.
I've been playing, and I've been playing in bands since I was 13 years old, and playing it live since then, professionally. And I still play in bands. And whenever I go and perform, it's back. It's there. And I think the difference is that as designers on a production team, there are so many other things we have to be concerned with. Budgets and the whole process of building and focusing and dealing with issues that come up in the production. Whereas when I play a gig, I set up my equipment, I play 3 hours, and I tear it down and I go home. None of that's there. I don't deal with any of that.
Well, it's interesting. I tell you guys a lot of stories that have these great quotes or chestnuts of knowledge from the different people I've worked with. And one of the quotes that I probably say more than any other quote of advice that I've ever heard anyone give was many, many years ago. I had an assistant and he was kind of like down in the dumps on a dinner break because he just felt like the show we were working on was not the meaningful piece of theater that he had hoped to work on when he got out of college. And our friend Driscoll Otto pulled him aside and said, part of this job is you have to find a way to fall in love with every project that you work on.
Yeah.
And sometimes falling in love with it might mean being in love with the fact that you're currently employed as a theatrical worker. It doesn't always have to be that it fulfills your soul and your need for artistic expression, but that you're alive and working in theater. And I took that to heart too. And I have come to realize for myself that a part of what the passion of this creative process is to me, I've talked before, especially in the episode where we had Dave Gallo on, about my father, who was also a scenic designer, and he passed away in 2008. And that I have found that, this working in this medium is something that helps me stay connected to my father. And that is enough to keep me motivated to do it. And also, when I'm not working, I feel that sort of, the pain, the pangs of like how I need to be connected to that relationship again. And, whenever I'm in the creative mode, I feel that connection again, and it fulfills me. And that's what drives me. And it's interesting because we talked about all these other things about getting paid, and I think a lot of the rules and regulations in our industry exist because so many of us are so passionate about what we do that if it weren't for these rules and regulations, we probably would not be very good about getting paid because we love it. We're doing this out of love first for the most part. There's not a lot of people that become theatrical designers because there was a job opening. It's because there's a love and a passion for that art. So it's an interesting question to think about, how you get something out of it and how it kind of fulfills your soul in many ways. What do you think, Steve?
I agree. I get that question a lot from students. How do you know that you like something? How do you know you've made the right decision and you're going into the right field? And again, I think you've kind of nailed it. I think, or Driscoll has. I think when you go into the theater, you have to find a reason to be there, and you have to be a contributing member of that design team. I've worked on some real dogs in my life, but I've also found pleasure in working with them. So I think once you lose the passion, you're kind of lost. It's not even paycheck. It's when you're just showing up and you're doing, I hate to say the minimal amount of work, because I don't think you're doing the minimal amount of work, but when you're doing the work and there's absolutely no joy in what you're doing, and you're not bringing any kind of joy to the people around you, you're just there, and you're just kind of a dark spot in the room. You need to go on a sabbatical. You need to go on, you need to go do your bucket list for 6 months or a year and see if you can re-energize yourself. And if you can't, you step away from it. And there's no shame in that. You've just reached a point where you've said everything you have to say, and you're moving on to something else. I mean, musicians do that. Circling back to David, they find that they're no longer interested in pursuing that type of musical writing they're doing, and they move into a new genre, and all of a sudden something else happens. Actors do it all the time. We want Harrison Ford to be Han Solo for the rest of his life. I mean, it wouldn't be a very exciting career for him.
I was just going to say that listening to what Steve was talking about and the musicians moving on to a new genre, I'm a novelty seeker. So I've been called that. So I tend to want to, after a while, something becomes routine for me. Maybe that's the artist in me. I got to find something else. So I would say if you're reaching the point where that spirit is not there for you, like Steve says, then find something else. And I have, even though it's still light in a lot of ways, or it's still theatrically based, but I've done everything from throwing pots to driving trucks to you name it, and I just get bored. So, and boredom, I heard a great quote the other day. The cure for boredom, Steve will like this, the cure for boredom is curiosity, and curiosity has no cure.
All right, Zach has the last question of the day.
Danny in Comac asks, I have heard that some designers charge for a kit rental, and others may actually rent all their hardware and software for tech. What are your thoughts on this? Well, that's a very interesting question. I think, What's interesting about this in the theatrical world is there's a set of tools that all of us are expected to have. Whether you're a lighting designer and you're expected to have Vectorworks and Lightright and other software like that, or a projection designer who's expected to have your own computer and your own copy of Photoshop and After Effects. What I've always found that's interesting in theater is that the sound department has managed to leapfrog over all of us and convince producers that everything they use has to be rented from a shop, whether it's down to like a mouse and a monitor to the computer and the software. Whereas the rest of us are sort of expected to provide this library of stuff that some of which costs a lot of money. I mean, Vectorworks is not cheap. And if you're an early career designer, that's a humongous expense. I mean, that's why you see so many regional productions has the student watermark on the Vectorworks plot, because they just can't afford to make it to the professional version. So one of the things that I've learned about is outside of theater, in a lot of other industries, in film world, in architectural world, there's this idea of this kit rental. So you kind of put a value on your kit, your computer, the software that you have, et cetera, and you might charge for a day rate or a weekly rental rate for your kit. And this is to help defray some of the cost of owning all this stuff that is basically an unspoken requirement in the theater. I mean, the other way to try to do it is to, in your fee, accommodate that, or if you have a budget, accommodate a little extra to help cover the cost of all this software. But it's an interesting question, because I think, we don't really talk that much about, we talk a lot about what software should I know, what software should I own, but we don't talk a lot about who should pay for this stuff. And especially if you're working in a venue or on a project where there's a specific piece of software that you need to have that is not necessarily something that you would normally have, I think that it's totally okay to approach the producers or the employer or the client and ask if they want to pay for this kit rental. I'm sure, Stan, in your corporate world and in your architectural world, you encounter some of this when you have to deal with, a lot of the 3D stuff that goes into some of those projects, right?
Well, I want to say, I have two comments. One on the theatrical side, something that I saw some of my recent graduates start doing is very entrepreneurial. Lighting designers are purchasing their own consoles and even fixtures, and then they get hired and they say to the theaters,
right?
They include the console for the run of the show. They might even include some of the fixtures, so their own little kind of side rental agency with their artistic thing, and that's really helping them build capital and to look back and to fund their retirements, right? So that's really very entrepreneurial. I think that's kind of a cool way to go. On the architecture side, for example, a single license of AutoCAD, not AutoCAD Lite, which is less, but a full-blown 3D AutoCAD, that's $2,400 a seat. So you're going to have to figure that in. And like for me, my liability insurance and all it's called overhead, and so you do have to kind of think about the cost that you have to do the work that you do, including your retirement, including if you got to have healthcare. If you're a freelancer, you got to start building that into your fees. And when people push back, you got to have an answer to, well, look, this, and this. Really expensive in the architecture world now is BIM 360, which is this building information management, and where everybody's working in the same model, right, at the same time. And for most of our projects, when the architect is using them, they kind of cut us some slack because they know it would cost us a lot to be in BIM 360. But I think as we move forward, we're probably going to have to suck it up. And that'll mean when we tell people our hourly rate, they go, wow, that's a lot of money you make. Well, not so fast. When you think about all the expenses, it's not as much as you think. So, and I think that's true. Those are large overhead costs, and people in architecture, if you're not using Vectorworks is not happening in the world of architecture. Some people are small offices, but everything is Autodesk, right? It's the big gorilla on the block. So you've sort of got to be working in that. And BlueBeam, which ironically, BlueBeam Review, which I think the theater would love, is like PDF for, and that's not too expensive. That's a Nemetschek product, and everybody's adopted it in construction. So, yeah, definitely you have to start to consider all of those items. But I'm for it. I'm for folding in those costs and the entrepreneurial thing that people are doing with not just bringing their design sensibilities, but also bringing some hardware along with it, which is actually a value add.
Well, during the pandemic, I started moving back into small film shoots. And one of the things I looked at really fast was how much I was going to have to pay the government at the end of the year. And so I countered that by making investments in equipment. So I purchased a small tungsten package, maybe a dozen lights, and a small grip package. And so for interior work. So I could go in and do these shoots, and here's just my fee. And it's kind of expected, actually, on the small stuff that you bring everything with you. So it was a no-brainer. It was just, here's my fee, turnkey operation. I'm going to show up. Yeah, I've got a couple sandbags. Yes, I've got some C-stands. Yes, I got some lights. Yes, I have some cable. And just, I was better in control of what I was doing also. And within four shoots, I'd paid for it. It was free and clear. Those opportunities don't come up very much anymore, but right now they do with tungsten, because all this mole equipment and E&Aero equipment is dirt cheap because people are switching to LED. So it just made sense at the time to do it.
It is expensive. It's all expensive, but you get the tax write-off. That's the great thing. You invest something like that, you write that off as a Section 179. And again, something, Stan, and we all said earlier, listen to Artistic Finance. If you really want to know how to do this stuff, go and listen to Ethan Steimel's fabulous podcast, Financial.
Or you can just tune us in a few weeks. He's going to be on the show.
Yeah, that's right. He's going to be on the show again. That's right. Oh, he's never been on the show, has he?
Never been on.
Oh, okay. We're going to grill him. So send in your questions.
Is he going to give financial advice, or are we just going to talk about the pod?
I don't know what he's going to talk about, but hopefully but maybe a little bit of both. I mean, the financial advice is really important. It's a great program. As long as you don't listen to the one I'm on. And like I said, I'm telling you right now, I got to put that disclaimer out.
I think he rated mine highly.
Yes, well, because you know what you're doing with money. I don't. It's that simple.
Right. Just because I don't have any, I got to know what I'm doing.
I just piss it away. I just spend it. It's enough, right? Go home. Yeah, let's go to the casino, baby. Yeah. Let's go to the casino. Turn over that $1,000. Hey, Zach, you been spending time at the casino?
I have not.
Don't tell your wife. Okay, good.
She doesn't listen anyway, answer. But yes, I have not. I think you and I have the same problem is that, we invest in stocks, bonds, and musical instruments.
That's right. You should see it. Stan will tell you there are empty boxes all over my house of keyboards. I just got another keyboard this week. It's insane. What am I doing? I'm throwing all this money away.
I have to say, my wife thinks about this very differently. She thinks about Light Talk and, the way a wife should think about it. She, a while ago, she said, "You guys have a play date today?" Yes, we have a play date today.
Yeah, this is pretty much it. Well, the rocking sounds of the Luminoids tells us that once again you spent another morning listening to Light Talk. You can hear our show on just about every podcast site out there, and check out our website on lighttalk.org, and be sure to follow us on Facebook and subscribe to the podcast. That way you will not miss a second of Light Talk insanity.
No guarantee is offered regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on this podcast. However,
if you do decide to litigate, the Snoot Group with the legal team of Sparks, Burnout, and Chase will defend us until our retirement funds are depleted.
Light Talk is written and produced by the Lumen Brothers, coming to you from Long Beach and Long Beach. And the Vegas Strip and the Republic of Texas.
And be sure to join us next week. Actually, join us at LDI when we talk about more lighting shenanigans and serve you more of our casserole of nonsense. And that's today at 4 o'clock, Saturday. Come, all.
Bring your fez.
Bring your fez. Yes. We bringing our fezzes. We got fezzes.
Light Talk. Broadcasting questionable Lumen knowledge and humor around the world.
So we'll see you all next Saturday morning. Bye-bye from Light Talk.
Stay away from the basketballs.